First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
I apologize to him. Folks, maybe some of you were with us earlier this afternoon. Lee and Ross were covering the severe thunderstorm threat. I suspect maybe we got some gust, weather team, and Lee and Ross are with me. Maybe we got some gusts somewhere up to 55 or 60, but at least officially, I didn't see any gusts higher than 48 miles per hour. Team agree
At
with
Mayport?
Yep, 40.
Mayport, right.
Mayport,
48 at
48,
Mayport,
and then
46
the
at the airport.
Yes.
Right. And for what it's worth, Mayport's observation site is above the standard site. I mean, it's interesting to
okay.
have, but it's
little
forget
bit
exactly,
higher
but
up.
it's over 20 feet.
I think I saw Arlington was 41 miles per hour too. I don't know where theirs is, but
And for those who don't
Generally.
remember, severe is 50 knots, which is about 58 miles per hour.
right.
So again, what I'm showing you here is the big picture, and it just to sort of reinforce that the frontal system has finally made it down toward us. Now it is showing a bit of an extreme because the airport probably got about the best, if I can put it that way, downpour locally. As you two, that is Lee and Ross, were in here, and folks, when I say here, I'm talking about what do we call it, the streaming room?
Yeah.
The severe
Stream room, yeah.
storm streaming room. I was out working on some long-term forecasts, but watching you all, but then also watching the airport. And I think 15 minutes, it went from 94 down to 79 and eventually settled down to 74 degrees. So we know not everybody in Jacksonville
Big drop.
area, is in the 70s, but still. Now, personally, for me as a forecaster, although we knew these storms were heading in toward drier air and more stable air, and so that's why the forecast was that the whole situation would weaken, I was curious if that was going to create a cool outflow boundary that maybe might combine with enough heat to do something else. Doesn't look like it is, but we'll verify that in a second. Just wanted to share everybody the big picture. If you remember, this all started with a major low pressure system that got vertical. Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, when we say vertical, from the surface up to about 30,000 feet. And if you look closely, you can still see that spin. Maybe the hub has passed Chicago, heading toward Grand Rapids, and sort of has these arms spinning off of it. But it's a mature system that is gradually weakened, and there's not nearly as much severe weather with it. In fact, at least over the last couple of hours, some of the strongest thunderstorms in the whole country were right where we are, stretching from New Orleans and right along I-10. I personally think if you're not at home and you don't see all the different ingredients to these storms, just check out where the lightning is. And that's where some of the more intense storms were and are. And so now I'm going to zoom on in and let Ross and Lee talk a little bit, because you guys were covering these storms. So I think I have it on a 5-hour loop here. So the severe thunderstorm warning for Duval was issued at about 2:15, maybe?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, okay.
I feel like
Lee was in a Zoom, and the airport went from an airport warning then to a severe thunderstorm warning.
I'm trying to gauge it up. Like Ross usually arrives at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I got here like a couple minutes late today, so I don't think I got in here until it was at least 2:15.
But you were very close to the start of that. So
Yeah.
right around that time. And
But you can see even there, and I guess that's why I want y'all to take it over when it got to like Nassau and Duval. But it was, in my opinion, more intense when it was off to the west and northwest of us, and then headed our way, and then really was on its weakening trend, I think, by the time it got into Nassau and Duval.
yeah, definitely. When they first issued it, it looked like it had a strong bowing segment with strong wind. We looked at the hail cores, and our radar was trying to show the hail possibility, and it was a strong storm that definitely warranted that severe thunderstorm warning. But then as Ross and I were talking, we saw it kind of fall apart, some split up. It wasn't that defined line. It started breaking up into a bunch of little pieces like you see now on your screen. Then also, I'll let Ross talk about this, but we were watching a cell that looked like it was moving towards originally the Sanderson area, but generally speaking, it was towards I-10. It was, while we had a severe thunderstorm warning over Duval, that looked like the stronger storm with all of the lightning, Ross.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it there. It goes through northern Columbia, goes through Baker County, and then right now moves into the western part of Duval and completely breaks apart, fizzles out. So the showers and even a few rumbles of thunder that might linger around northern Clay into St. Johns County, that's all from the storm that had a ton of lightning, some very, very heavy rain, and completely just fizzled on out by the time it hit I-10 and continued off to the southeast.
I'm with you in that because of the flow, it's actually more moist off to the west and southwest. And I was concerned that, as you all said, that was a strong storm, but then also at least on its southwest flank, it was going to have some pretty high dew points working into it. But obviously that didn't enhance that storm one bit.
I will say the Storm Prediction Center, when they bumped up that part of our area into the slight risk, I think they still did a pretty good job because where it covered on western Duval and Nassau and inland, that was the stronger area the stronger storm. And then, of course, once it moved closer to the coast and as it continues to move to the south, not as strong.
Yeah. So now I guess our job as gang is to try to help those who are south of Duval. I would say that very southern line is, if there's going to be anything to re-intensify, we're talking about now from north of St. Augustine to Green Cove Springs, and then I would sort of connect the dots to just north of Fort White, right? I would say anybody south of there, if there's going to be redeveloping strong storms, I think that's where it's going to be, although obviously still a few showers to the north.
And this is why Ross and I were also saying not everyone's going to see rain. Yes, we're streaming right now because there's strong thunderstorms out there, but we do expect this to break apart. And look at that. It really has now just, the occasional downpours, off and on rain for some, but some people are staying dry and therefore hot today as well.
I think without tooting our own horn, because I like to let others decide how we did on this, but it is, I think, one of the reasons why yesterday we were using the terminology there would be some showers and thunderstorms, but certainly we didn't go for a weather impact alert day because we didn't quite hit the thresholds, and we were wondering, would in fact we get to 60% with rainfall accumulations? It's going to be interesting to see. But anyhow,
I even think the airport only got like 5 to 10 hundredths of an inch, or a tenth of an inch. So really didn't get that much rain.
No, and the models indicated that. I mean, even the contour models yesterday indicated maybe a tenth to a quarter of an inch. So it's going to be interesting to see if anybody even got a quarter of an inch. I'm hoping, selfishly, that there's a garden there near Atlantic Beach that got a tenth of an inch.
Meaning your own backyard.
And front yard, because I really don't have a yard. It's just all pretty much a garden. I'm using using the term garden loosely. I just mean that's where I'm attempting.
What do you grow? Have you talked about this before on the 4 o'clock stream? I know I'm not here every day, but I want to know about your
Ross
garden.
doesn't pay attention to what I talk about, but if it's not weather, but generally, maybe even if it's weather, I am a newbie. I lived in a condominium for a long time. Didn't have a room for a garden, and now we don't really have a yard. It's just enough room for different plots to grow, and so I'm really just trying to learn. And it's not so much from books; it's as much from what do I see lives and what doesn't live. And I personally, I will occasionally water the garden, but I'm personally a believer that in Florida, with as much rain that we have, I try to find plants that that can handle dry periods. But to be honest with you, it's a learning process. Any of my neighbors are well aware it's a learning process because my garden does not always look lush. You can see where I like to look at it as research.
Yeah.
And you can see where the research in some areas turned out with some what's the word? Verdant. Is that a word? Verdant answers, as in lush and vibrant. And then other times where research was then plowed under, so to speak. Ross knows what that is as a farmer, right?
What's thriving?
Yeah, what is thriving for you?
Oh, what is thriving for me? Okay, so I water a little bit, don't like to water a lot. We have very sandy soil, so lantanas do really well this time of the year. Something called dune daisies.
I was going to ask about dune daisies.
Yes, dune daisies.
Glad to know.
They can look kind of measly, or I'm looking for the word. They can look really bad, but if they get a little bit of rain, man, they recover quickly. And it makes sense because you can see them in the dunes, which implies that they must be able to handle, as I hop around there just to make sure nothing heavy duty is happening. So right now, lantanas, dune daisies, irises. Do you know what irises are?
Yes.
Okay, irises are doing really well. Bougainvillea. Now this is something, I've always loved bougainvillea. What I've learned about bougainvillea, if you continue to water it, which as you know I don't like to do, but for people who water their bougainvilleas, it always looks lush. But you know, in my opinion, the great thing about the bougainvillea is those vibrant blossoms that it has. If you want that to happen, it has to go through a dry period. That's why they tend to do so well on the Mexican, Costa Rican, or in California coast, because they have dry periods and they get moist period. So they have to have those dry periods. You should see how interested Ross is in this.
No,
So-
I'm
Farmer Ross.
laughing inside.
So they have to have those dry periods to where they almost look like they're dying, but then they get some rain and
Is that what you tell yourself to convince yourself you're going to be a good gardener or a good farmer?
I've never used the term good.
Okay.
I sometimes have to convince my wife that I am actually learning some things.
Ross,
She's-
what do you recommend for him then?
Well, I don't know. So, because the growing period down here is way different than what I'm used to. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I have tropical calla lilies.
Oh,
I have
this is
dahlias.
what-
I have
okay.
salvia.
How much are you watering them?
Depends what the temperature is, and if it's full sun that day. I would say every 2 to 3 days, especially
Okay.
over this past weekend.
Okay.
So if we watered it on Friday, I think we watered it again on Monday. Then.
Okay.
Nice.
I try to stay away from that, but therefore it becomes a very different situation as far as what can handle it.
You're leaving it fully up to the weather.
I
to allow
I
your
can't
crops
honestly say
and
fully,
vegetation to grow.
but I'm trying. I'm trying to get what do they call it? Xeriscaping. That's my attempt. Meanwhile, folks, so we call this storm core. And so just to be clear, this isn't necessarily showing where the rain is, but it's a way to try to follow where there might be some strong storms. And Lee and Ross have set up an excellent color code there. And if you look closely, there's nothing really beyond what we would call moderate. Certainly not even close to severe. And outside of that one cell you see northwest Baker County, everything else continues to be settling south. So I think this continues to support the idea that if anything were even to get close to, are we wondering if it's going to be severe, I think we could say now St. Augustine, Green Cove, at least near Lake City, right?
Yeah, it looks like it'll be a dry night, at least for dinner plans.
So hopefully,
Jack's.
we were thinking maybe the Jumbo Shrimp would get their game in. I think that maybe they will.
Yeah, certainly so.
5 p.m. graduation downtown might be okay.
I think that'll be all right as well.
Okay.
Maybe some wet roads and things like that.
But you know who we love. We love the people in Fernandina, but we also love the people in St. Augustine, right? And so if you're in St. Augustine, notice that downpour could be heading for you.
And something else too. I was trying to look out to the west because Ross and I were seeing in the model runs too when we were looking through this. It looked like maybe some redevelopment over
Yes.
by Lake City with
Yep.
the energy coming out of the Gulf and the Panhandle. So, what are your thoughts on that, Tim?
I'm also watching that as well. And so I was especially curious about that cell that you noticed in Tallahassee. But what I'm thinking now is, I wonder if that's just going to hug the coast and feed off the wind coming off the Gulf, and maybe, and maybe if it does get to I-75, it's going to be more like south of Lake City.
Okay.
I mean, beyond maybe the next hour. So if we're talking 5 o'clock and later, that's what I'm thinking. But I agree, it's kind of iffy because look at north of Valdosta. I was following when those big storms erupted near Waycross. They did throw out, and I was looking at the visuals, and they did throw an outflow boundary that went due west. And so I think that's being hit by where there's still some heat, and so I think that even if something were to form there, it would fall apart once it gets into where we see those cooler temperatures. In fact, you can really see now as we go beyond radar the cool pool where temperatures have dropped into the, I think it just, look at it
Wow.
in the 70s there. Yeah, so look at
96
Valdosta.
Palatka.
Yeah, so look at Valdosta. So obviously some heat there, but I think if anything forms there, it's going to get into that cool pool, and I suspect that's going to be it. I'm going to kind of zoom out here. So we think by 8 o'clock, and if y'all think this is wrong, yell at me. Storms heading out of most of our area by 8 o'clock, but maybe a few isolated showers lingering for the extreme southern counties. That's why we're still giving about 10% of the area some showers tomorrow. Let's see what the new computer model does. And there is 8 o'clock, and yeah, except for the Gulf Coast, that's about it tomorrow morning. Maybe we see something coming in from the Gulf, but even there, isolated showers. Yeah, so.
And our southern counties again.
Yeah, southern counties, yeah. So we're talking maybe far southern St. John's, Flagler, Putnam County. Here's another look at the synoptic scenario. And all the folks, you see a lot of clouds coming at you from the west, the actual surface boundary that we're calling the front, that slowly settles southward with each wave as we go through Thursday and through Friday, which is why when we go into the afternoons on Thursday and Friday, most big thunderstorms will be south of there. So tomorrow, still above average temperatures, but not as hot, not as humid. Notice the breezes at the beaches. So I'm thinking 88 at the beach, maybe about 11 or noon, but then they get more of a north to northeast breeze, and I think the beaches actually drop a little bit. Now notice, I don't use the term flat that often, but the last 2 days have been flat. And in fact, I noticed even the National Weather Service, the only discussion of a wave was from the west, which means it's flat. Because, of course, that's heading the other way. Tomorrow, I do think we'll see a bit of a, hop up there. Oh, Lee is letting us know. It's 4:22. We're done, folks. So there's a real quick look at your 7-day update, and we will have more. We'll see you then.